Hi, welcome to My Life, My Songs. I'm your host, Jimmy Fortune, and we've got an incredible show for you today, featuring one of the most amazing songwriters in recording history you'll ever hear. I can promise you that. My friend, my good friend, Mr. Bill Anderson. Bill, thank you so much for being on. You got me nervous, man. I've never been on this side of it before, interviewing what I consider the biggest icon probably in country music history, as far as your writing and your singing, and you're entertaining, buddy. Thank you so much for being on here. How you been, man? You been doing okay?
I've been doing real good,
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
You're living up to your name, Whispering Bill.
The crew out there dared me to do that.
You didn't even introduce me as Whispering Bill because I was all set to do that.
Now, they're going to see, I fooled you, didn't I?
Oh, man, great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're so honored, we really are, man. You know, I know most everybody knows your story, but I want you to take...
Well, then what am I here for?
Because we got a lot of new people watching today. But take me back to your childhood, man. Tell us all about that. Growing up in Columbia, South Carolina.
Boy, it's been so many years. I don't know how much of it I can remember. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. My parents were both originally from Georgia. So when I was about 8 years old, my parents decided they wanted to go back a little closer to their home and be closer to their parents. Mm-hmm. And we moved to a little town right outside of Atlanta. It was a little town back then called Decatur, Georgia. And I kind of grew up there, not really in Decatur, but kind of out in the country from Decatur. And got interested in music at a real early age, wanted to play baseball. I thought I was going to grow up to be a left-handed pitcher in the major leagues.
You could have been a baseball player.
Well, a funny thing happened on my way to on my way to Wrigley Field with the Cubs. I loved playing ball, but music just kind of took over and became my life, and I'm glad it did. And you know the main reason, if I'd have been a ball player, right now, I'd have been washed up for 50 years. Because you got to be young to play ball, and there's no age limit on writing songs.
Well, maybe you could have played ball and then got into country music, but no, you just loved it too much.
Why didn't I think of that?
But you know, not only that, but you were a DJ at a radio station. They played mostly pop and rock stuff at one time.
Well, the
right?
first station I got a job at was in Athens, Georgia. I was in school at the University of Georgia. And went to work at this station, and they said, now, I'll tell you something before you start. You're not going to play any country music. Well, I finally talked them into letting me play a couple hours on Saturday night. Right. And I got through the whole week just living for Saturday night. And then finally they decided, well, we're just not going to let you play any country music. So they fired me real nice, though. They said, we think we found a little station up the road where you'll fit in. And I went up to a great little town called Commerce, Georgia, and became a DJ on the station there, and that's where I wrote my first songs that anybody ever heard, and life just kind of went good from there. So I'm glad I got fired.
Well, so about a year later, you wrote City Lights, and then I guess they were sitting there saying, "My God, what did we do? We got rid of our our cash cow here." But man, what a great career you've had, man. I mean, I've always said when you're looking into country music, if you could put it in a time capsule and somebody was going through it, and when you dig down and find everything, you'd find Bill Anderson there, and he'd be the start of just about everything that's going on in country music today.
Well, bless your heart. Thank you. I had a lot of people that I looked up to and admired coming along. I mean, I certainly didn't invent country music, but being there in the early days, I came to Nashville, Jimmy, in 1959, really, and played at the Opry for the first time and began hanging out.
And in a year, you signed with Decca Records.
Yeah, but coming here at that point, it was kind of the end of what we call the hillbilly era. You know, we used to travel on the road with a big bass fiddle strapped to the top of the car or the station wagon and sleep on the floor and do the best we could. You know, I got here just in time to see a little bit of that, and then to see it kind of move into modern country music, or what was considered modern back then. So I've been very, very blessed. I really have.
Well, you've co-written a lot of, you not only write by yourself, but you've co-written a lot of great songs with people.
I didn't start co-writing, Jimmy, until I was well into my career, I spent the first 30-something years or so writing by myself. And then one day I learned we can have a lot of fun if we get together with some of our friends. And I've really enjoyed the times I've been able to write with you, man. It's been a highlight. I love it.
Well, we've got some that we need to do some demos on at some point. We need to get those done. I hope we can do it. But I do love, like I said, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you. I really can't. Like I said, you had me nervous right off the bat because and I mean that in a good way. I mean, I respect you so much, and to be sitting here asking you questions, I'm like, am I worthy of that? You know. But I'm thankful for the opportunity. We'll be right back with more My Life, My Songs right here after this. Welcome back to My Life, My Songs. But you know, you've written so many songs which have gone to be #1 hits, and who are some of your favorite? Well, I know I'm gonna put you on the spot. If I say favorite co-writes, but I mean some that just stand out in your mind.
Oh golly, well, as I mentioned, I've loved writing with you. You and I have gotten together with Jamie Daly from Daly and Vincent.
Yeah, we didn't want to mention that, but
he paid me, said to do that. And they've recorded a few of the things that you and I were part of writing. And oh man, I've been so blessed to get to write with the people like Dean Dillon, John Randall, Jamie Johnson, Buddy Cannon, just all these people that are in touch with country music today, but they haven't forgotten where country music came from. And it's been so much fun. Vince Gill was the first real modern country artist that I tried to write with, and we wrote 2 songs, and darn if he didn't record both of them. So I figured I was off to a pretty good start. But it's been so much fun, and if I've left anybody out, and I have, I've left a lot of people out. I'm sorry.
No, you've written with a lot of, you know, Steve Warner for one.
That's right. Yeah.
He's a great guy too.
Love writing with Steve.
And you know, but I find I love co-writing, but I've always said you have to have a thick skin when you go into co-write with somebody. Because you know, you throw ideas out there and it may not be, but you have to be willing to say, okay, well, let's hear what you got, and then when they say it, you know, being a songwriter, you know what's best for the song.
I'll tell you a great example of that. I went in with John Randall back in 2000, and I had an idea. We got to the session. You always go to a writing session with an idea so that you won't just be totally lost.
That was going to be my next question. How do you get ideas for them? So that's good.
Well, I had an idea, and John said, well, what have you brought to the session? And I said, well, I've got an idea. I want to write a song called Midnight Cigarette. I said, I want to compare a cigarette going out in an ashtray with a relationship that's gone out between a man and a woman. He said, man, I love that thought. And then he picked up his guitar, and he said, I've got a little thing here I've been fooling with. And he said, he put the bottle to his head, pulled the trigger. And I said, whoa, forget about Midnight Cigarette.
Man.
But then we used my line as the opening line of Whiskey Lullaby, which we wrote. But that was a case of I went in there with a pretty good idea, but his idea was better than mine. And you're right, I had to check my ego at the door and say, your idea is better than mine, let's write yours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. First time I heard that song, I literally almost, you know, it just stopped me dead in my tracks. I was, what a song.
Thank you.
And another one that really got me was I've done a lot of things different.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite songs. I mentioned Dean Dillon, and it's interesting how that song came about because Dean and I didn't know each other all that well. I mean, we'd run into each other. He called me the night before our writing session, and he said, let's get together for breakfast in the morning. Let's get acquainted. So I said, what time? He said, 7:30. I said, in the morning? I didn't know there was a 7:30 in the morning. So I went down and met him at a little place called the Pie Wagon, and we had breakfast, and we talked, and he talked about the way he grew up and his family, and I talked about mine. And when we left there to go try to write a song, we were on the same wavelength. I felt like I'd known him for a long, long time.
Wow.
And we walked in the office and came up with a song called, you know, if I could go back and do things over, I'd do a lot of things different. I don't think that song would have ever been written, though, if we hadn't had breakfast that morning.
Wow. Yeah, because I've sat down with songwriters before, and we've sat down for hours and just talked, but never came up with anything.
You know what that's called?
It's called not being a good songwriter.
No, it's called co-staring.
Oh, I'm co-staring.
You sit there and stare at each other.
I'm co-staring with you today. Okay, I got you. Have you ever, and I've never been able to do this, but I don't know if you, I'm sure you probably can. You ever wrote sit down and write a song for a specific artist? Somebody said, hey, I need a song. Can you write a song for me?
Very seldom. I don't find that I write the best that way. I find that I just rather put it down the best I can do it, or with a co-writer the best we can do it, and then kind of let it find its own home. There have been times I've written a few just for myself that I knew I was going to keep and record myself, like Mama Sang a Song, for example, things that are very personal to me. Most of the time I prefer, let's just write the song and see where it lands.
Mama Sang a Song. Tell us about that song. I know there's a story behind it.
Well, it's very special to me. My mama was a big influence on me, and not only musically, but you know, personally, and raising me and teaching me a lot of things that I should have learned. And I just wanted to pay tribute to her, and got to thinking about it one day, and just, she was the daughter of a preacher. So my grandfather was a Methodist minister. And my mama sang all the old hymns around the house. I'd see her washing dishes, singing, "What a friend we have in Jesus," you know. And I got to thinking about that and just started writing, really. And at the end of the day, I had written a song, and I knew that it was so personal to me that I was the one to record it, although other people came along and recorded it. One of my favorite records I ever got on a song of mine was Walter Brennan's version of Mama Sang a Song.
Oh, I loved Walter Brennan.
Oh, me too. And when I heard him say, "My mama sang a song,"
oh,
man. But I knew in the beginning that song was for me.
Man. We'll be right back with more My Life, My Songs after this. Welcome back to My Life, My Songs with your host, Jimmy Fortune. Well, you know, you were talking a little bit about playing ball, you know, how you wanted to play ball. And I know of a special trip you took up to Stanton, Virginia with the Statler Brothers years ago when you were going up there to do the 4th of July.
You're going to embarrass me bad, aren't you?
and so they challenged you, didn't they, to a ball game?
Yeah, well, see, I had a band back then, I don't know, 5 or 6 guys, and a bus driver, and a road manager, and a sound engineer, and we got up a little softball team. And we'd been playing around, you know, we'd go into these towns, and we'd challenge the disc jockeys at the local station, and we would play games, and we raised money for charity, and we raised a lot of money for charity. Conway Twitty had a team, and Barbara Mandrell, and Ray Griff, different people around town had different teams and all. And the Statlers called you, said, "You're coming up here, you go bring your ball team." So my ball team is my band, okay? So I get up there, and before the game, I'm walking around, and the Statlers, were you there? Were you with the Statlers then?
I wasn't with them then, but I heard this story from both sides, so I want to hear your side of it right now.
Well, I'm going around, they're out taking infield practice, and I walk over to the second baseman, and I just say, "Hi, I'm Bill Anderson," and he introduced himself, and I looked and I said, "Didn't the New York Mets used to have a player with that same name?" He said, "Yeah, that was me." I said, "You played for the New York Mets?" And then I'm going around, and Don and Harold and those guys had brought in a bunch of ringers. It was a bunch of hillbilly players on one side and a bunch of retired professional players on the other side. Of course we got beat.
You learned real quick with Don and Harold pulling tricks on you,
I learned not
buddy.
to trust them Statler boys ever again.
I had 21 years on the bus with them, buddy. I can tell you the tricks they pulled on me. But what a great 21 years it was, man.
Oh, I love those guys.
They love
and the
you
greatest
too.
compliments in the world, you know, the old road hog.
Oh,
Here's
yeah.
old Bill Andrews, the poor old boy himself, you know.
Bill Andrews.
I wouldn't take anything for my friendship and my relationship with Don and Harold Reed and all the Statler brothers, Phil and Lou, and you, of course.
Yeah, we lost Harold, you know, a while back, and boy, I miss him. I still think I can call him up on the phone and talk, and we did. We talked, you know, a couple of weeks before he passed away. We talked on the phone, and we laughed, and we did, I mean, just like we were reliving everything, you know. And I still think I can call him up. But he kept his sense of humor right up to the end. His daughters and his son said he was laying there, and he said he was getting towards the end and everything. He said he'd wake up every once in a while and go, "You mean I'm still here? I thought I'd be gone by now." Oh, but that's the way he was, you know. He lived his life. He was a very fortunate man, he said. "I'm blessed, you know, to have lived my life as we look at ourselves and go, man, you know what, we are. To do what we've loved to do all these years, we're so blessed. What more can we ask for?"
You know what you should do with his sense of humor? You said you used to call him. You ought to try calling him now. He'd probably answer. knowing Harold.
Well, I do say my prayers, and he butts in every once in a while. But you know, back in the mid '90s, you took a 10-year kind of a self-imposed hiatus, you might say. When you took that time off to reevaluate, how did you think about? You knew you were going to come back into it, but how did you think about that, and how were you going to approach it?
Well, what I took time off from was songwriting. I didn't take time off from performing.
Yeah, right.
I was doing some different kinds of performing. I was hosting game shows in California. Right. I was appearing on soap operas in New York and doing all kinds of crazy things. And then I had some personal things in my life that kind of derailed my plans for a while. But early in the 90s, you mentioned Steve Wariner a while ago. Mm-hmm. Steve was a hot artist. He had just had a bunch of hit records. And he recorded my old song called The Tips of My Fingers. And he took it to #1. I thought when he cut it, the song had already been cut by me and Roy Clark and Eddie Arnold and Gene Shepard. And I'm thinking, why is he recording again? I thought, well, it'll just be an album cut. It came out as a single and went to #1 in the charts. And it was a wake-up call for me, because I thought country music had changed so much that maybe I couldn't change with it. And then I realized, here's a song I wrote over 30 years ago. It's a hit today. I can write that again. I can write some more songs like that. And that's when the idea started percolating. Well, why don't you get with some of these artists? And as I said earlier, Vince Gill was the first one I got with, and we wrote a song called Which Bridge to Cross and Which Bridge to Burn that he took to #1 right, out of the chute. And I thought, hey, this co-writing thing is fun. No wonder people have been doing it all these years.
How'd you get so smart? That's what I want to know. I mean,
I went to the school of hard knocks.
But you get in there with like I said, you kind of stayed away from songwriting for a little bit. Then you come back, and then you looked at these artists. You realized that a good song never dies. You realized that the songs that you had already written, they were still living, they were still relevant. And then you look at these new artists and say, hey, might be able to hook up with these guys and maybe get back on the radio with a new song with them. That was pretty smart thinking.
Well, I wasn't trying to be smart. I was just trying to survive.
Well, that's right. But that says a lot about you with them too. They respect you so much. Everybody.
Well, I've made some wonderful friendships with you and Steve and Vince and John Randall and Dean. All these people I've just had. That I have so much respect for, because, like I said, you guys come at it from a little different angle, but what you do is so good, and I'm just glad everybody let me hang around and be a part of it.
There are lots more great stories up ahead on My Life, My Songs. Thanks for coming on back to My Life, My Songs. Well, you've won just about every award there is to win, including winding up in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Now, tell me how that felt. I know you were, it's just a feeling that can't
When I got the
probably.
phone call, it was like, this has to be happening to somebody else. This ain't happening to Bill Anderson from Commerce, Georgia, And I was just so blown away, and I still am blown away. I saw a picture the other day of some school kids down at the Hall of Fame, little tiny school kids. And my plaque down there is one of the low-hanging ones. And I saw this picture, just a snapshot somebody took of these little kids who weren't even born when I started in this business. And they're standing there in front of my plaque, and they're reading about Bill Anderson. And I thought, wow, man, what a moment this is. And what an honor it is to be in that Hall of Fame. I am, as the old song says, I am most richly blessed.
Yeah. I remember when Harold called me up, and I always thought that we'd never wind up in the Country Music Hall of Fame. I figured the Statler Brothers deserved to be there before I came along, because I came along in 1982.
But you didn't hurt them that bad.
Well, hopefully I didn't. But I remember telling Harold and Don and Phil, I said, guys, if you ever get a chance to go in, even if it's without me through my era, I said, I will. Jimmy Fortune will not be upset. Jimmy Fortune's in your corner. I would support that with everything I have. And you know what Harold told me? He said, no, little buddy, if you don't go in, we don't go in. That's what he told me.
Well, as great as Lou DeWitt was, and you took his place when he passed away, you had more years with them.
Well, I had almost 21.
And how many did Lou have?
19, I think, 18,
Oh,
19
was it that
years.
many?
Yeah, it was that
Okay.
many.
But you were still there a little longer, and you're so synonymous with the guys. I mean, they couldn't go in the Hall of Fame without
Well,
Jimmy Fortune. You know that.
I was so thankful. You know, I still can't figure that out. I have to pinch myself like you do. You
Yeah.
know, it's like you, as a kid, you don't think of, I'm gonna wind up I'm gonna be in a Hall of Fame of any kind. You know.
You know where I was in 1961, I think it was, the first year that they inducted people into the Hall of Fame. I was there. It was at the old Hillwood Country Club, the west side of Nashville.
Wow.
And it was a dinner, and they inducted Jimmy Rogers and Fred Rose and Hank Williams. And I stood there and watched that. And there's no way, I don't have a wild enough imagination to have pictured Bill Anderson ever being inducted into the Hall of Fame at that point. I mean, this was something that just happened elsewhere and to other people. I was so proud. I remember being so proud that there was a Country Music Hall of Fame, that they were starting one,
Right.
and that these people could be recognized. And then, of course, the next year, Mr. Acuff went in, and then, of course, Eddie Arnold and Ernest Tubb and Red Foley and all the greats. And I was there to see it, and wouldn't take anything for
That
that.
sounds like a book that needs to be written.
I saw it in color.
Yeah, there you go. So you got some new things happening, and I know that Bill, you're going to be going around for a long time. Like I said, somebody told me they're going to knock you in the head on Judgment Day, son. But I'll tell you what, you're one treasure to country music. You're a treasure to me and my life and many others out there. And I want to thank you for putting up with me being kind of a host for you today.
Oh, come on,
to
you're
come
great,
and say,
man.
But you know, it means a lot to me. It really does.
Is this being recorded? I thought we were just sitting here talking.
I'm afraid so. I'm afraid so. But anyway, thank you. I know there's some of these young kids that are watching today are going to get a lot out of this and learn a lot from you, and as I have through the years myself. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for watching My Life, My Songs, and we'll see you next time.